Okay. Let's see. I think we might be live. Um, as always, it is super hard to tell. So we're going to start in 1 minute. So you haven't missed anything. So if you want to drop in the comments, you want to drop hashtag coffee break. So just let me know that you love the Construction CPA's Coffee Cafe. This also helps naturally with Facebook's algorithms and all that funness that none of us absolutely understand. So just a second. I think we might actually be live. All right. So, all right. And again, if you want to drop hashtag coffee break into the comments, and away we go. Good morning, everyone. Welcome to today's edition of the Construction CPA's Coffee Cafe. I am Lisa Raish. I am the founder of Bodie Business Advisors, aka the Construction CPA, where we're dropping the hammer on cash flow problems for contractors with hands-off accounting so you can do things that matter. And today's topic, which is always a hot topic in construction, is cash flow management. So what are we going to talk about that's so important about cash flow? Cash is king, right? Everybody knows that. And it's super important in all businesses, but can be critical to a successful construction business. So why is it important? Construction is very unique. One of the big things that is unique about construction is there tends to be really heavy costs associated with projects on the front end, which, if you're not managing your cash flow, can cripple a project right out of the gate. So that's usually one of the really big things. The other thing is construction is notorious for really long wait times to get paid. So think about front-ending a lot of cost, waiting 45, 60, 90 days to get paid, and can be a recipe for disaster from a cash flow perspective in a construction business. So what are some of the key factors that are going to affect your cash flow? So seasonality. A good portion of the companies in this country are going to be seasonal, right? If you live in the northern part of the country, you probably are not working as much in the winter as you do in the summer. You might not work at all, depending on how, what the weather's like. If you don't have any exterior, if you only have exterior work, you don't have any interior work. So it might be seasonal. So now you have a lot of cash in the middle of the summer. Cash is just flowing in. You think, oh, I have all this extra cash, but now you've got to get that cash to last through that season, right? Through that cold season where maybe you don't have as much work going on. So that's a big thing. The other thing is timelines in projects. So depending on the type of project that you do, are you doing residential construction where you're periodically needing to draw on lines of credit and you have to hit certain points in your construction before you can actually draw on the line again? So again, there might be a timeline that you have to think about. Payment delays and slow receivables, notorious in the industry. It's awful, especially if you're in the commercial space. You could be waiting 60 to 90 days to get paid. Again, as I mentioned, really high upfront costs. If you're starting a project, you're paying for a good chunk of the materials to get going. Depending on when you can invoice the first time, you may have some headcount in there, or you may have outside contractors that are supporting you. Again, lots of costs associated with the projects to get you started. So again, that'll affect your cash flow. Material costs, right? Material costs over the last 3 years have been outrageous. They've up and down, up and down. I have conversations with clients, and wood is up, concrete was down, concrete now is up, wood has come back down a little bit. They're all over the place. So really there's huge fluctuations in your costs from the moment that you maybe put in a bid based on those material costs to the time that you actually order. The cost may be different. So you have to think about and factor those kinds of things in. And another big thing is change orders, right? No project starts off and goes exactly as you plan it. There's going to be changes, especially when you get into places like residential construction. A homeowner is going to make a change, want a different this, a different that, wants to add that, wants to put in a doorway, those kinds of things. So those are all going to affect your cash flow. So we want to give you some strategies and most effective ways to manage your cash flow. So first and foremost, and one of the really big things that we talk about here is forecasting. You need to forecast your financials. You need to forecast the project. When do you think you're going to be doing certain things within the project? So therefore, when do you think you're going to need the cash to do those things? And then doing that accurately. You budget it, you forecast it, and then you're tracking it throughout the length of the project. You need to do that, and you need to make comparatives up against that project to see exactly if you're in line with what you anticipated. Because if you are out of line, then now you're over budget on a project, and therefore now you've got more cash outlay. So, and that affects your cash flow. You need to have an invoicing system. Many of the clients that we work with are at least on QuickBooks. So they're using QuickBooks Online to do their invoicing for them, which is helpful. I've personally come in contact with other contractors that have done work at my own home. There was no invoicing system, right? I have work done on my home. I pay my first third deposit, and 2 weeks later, I'm asking them if they need money because they haven't asked me for any more money. So clearly, that's not an invoicing process or an invoicing system. So it's super important that you have those things in place. Are you invoicing once a month? Are you invoicing or at the end of the week, depending on the type of projects that you're doing? Again, what is your process? Having one in place, using it, over and over. And then, the other thing you have to worry about is if you don't have a process in place, maybe you do throw an invoice over the wall and then you wait to get paid. If you're not, you don't have a process in place to kind of chase that invoice like you need to, again, now you've created a cash flow problem because now you're waiting to get paid. There are opportunities to negotiate payment terms. There, depending on the type of business you have, especially with the materials and the vendors, that you may be able to negotiate that. If you are buying large quantities of something from a specific vendor, you now have the ability to potentially negotiate that because you are coming back regularly and buying products. So, can you negotiate payment terms or negotiate better prices or something like that? You need to have an emergency fund, right? I mean, every business, this isn't just a construction business. Every business needs an emergency fund because, look what happened, COVID. No one ever expected that. And suddenly, for many businesses, there's no cash coming in. So again, you want to have that emergency fund that if you need to tap into, you can, and you can keep yourself going so that you don't strangle your business kind of right out of the gate. Are there short-term financing options available? There can be. There are, if you have a relationship with your local financial institution, the bank that you do business with, do you have the ability to get yourself a line of credit for those periods where you cannot make, you don't have enough cash flow, right? Oh, I need cash this week. I'm going to get paid next week. So, let me draw on that line of credit and then I pay it back next week. You want to make sure you stick with kind of those short-term options. I would stay away from those factoring things. They can get very, very expensive very fast. They may give you that cash kind of right away, but it can be a very expensive tool to use. So something to kind of stay away from. But build a relationship with your local bank and make sure that you have some sort of like backup funding in place if you need it. You don't want to go to the bank to look to borrow money when you're having financial troubles. You want to have that in place. So things are great right now. Go to the bank, ask for that line of credit, even if you don't use it for the next 6 months. You have it. It's there for you when you need it. And you need to regularly review your financial statements and you need to kind of analyze what's going on with them, right? Are you budgeting, you've budgeted your projects. What have you spent against those projects? Are you in line on the project? Are you out of line? You have savings somewhere, right? Those are all the things that you need to be looking at. You don't want to look at a project or your overall financial statements after the period is dead and buried, right? You really want to be looking at it right now. So, if you're at, the end of a month, then, you should be looking at that prior month. If you're at the end of the year, you should be looking at, the whole year in that prior month. It's not, let me look at my financials in June for the prior year. That doesn't help you. You've probably already created some sort of cash flow problem and you're in a really tight space and there's not really anything you can do about it at that point. So there are tools that can help you out. The first thing is kind of that handy dandy Excel sheet. That's what we do with some of our clients is we do cash flow management in Excel and we're literally going through their invoicing, we're aging them out, seeing exactly when we think they're going to get paid. what expenses are they going to have coming up in those projects? When do we think that those costs are going to come up? So where that cash is going to be flowing out. That's a kind of traditional old school manual way of doing it. There are a number of products out there now. Some do it okay. Some do cash flow management better than others. There's no perfect tool, just like any other software or app out there. There'll be features of the apps that are fabulous that we love, and there'll be other things that we absolutely despise. So there's a product called Cash Flow Tools out there. There's a product called Float. We've used both of those. They are not the only ones on the planet. There are other ones. Those are just ones that we happen to have used around here. And again, you can kind of map it out in the product and kind of see where your cash is going to kind of ebb and flow, right? The ins, the outs, the ins, the outs, because you want to be able to see that. And it's important you look at it at least in the 13-week period. Looking at it month to month is great, but sometimes within that next upcoming 13-week period is where you have kind of that shortfall. That shortfall for that, oh, I had to make payroll on Friday. You want to know that 4 weeks out, then kind of falling upon that and realizing on a Monday that you don't have enough money to make payroll on Friday. So kind of little things like that, tools and technologies that you can use. You know, it is important to have some sort of cash flow management in place. Even if it's just an Excel spreadsheet and you're literally just tracking your cash in and out every week. It doesn't have to be some sort of magical, amazing tool. If it is telling you where, you think that you're going to have shortfalls, that is the most important thing. That is what you want to get ahead of before you find yourself, again, not able to pay your subs who are looking to get paid. And if your subs don't get paid, then they don't come back and finish the project or move on to the next project or so on. So those are the things that you need to, it doesn't have to be a fancy software or tool. It could literally be just a simple Excel spreadsheet. Those work well. Again, we still use them with a handful of our clients. So kind of some best practices and tips for your cash flow management. First, you need to have an open communication with your clients, your subs, your suppliers. Everyone struggles and everyone knows that. So you need to, first and foremost, if you're having a challenge, have that conversation with the supplier. Right now, I get it. You probably don't want to have that conversation with the homeowner, but you also need to have open communication with, if you're, again, and I say the homeowner, it's not always a homeowner. It could be a commercial project, but whoever that client is, right? Clear, we will be invoicing here, 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 and here, so that they're not surprised. Oh, I got an invoice. I didn't know. No, we're getting here, here, and here. These are our payment terms, so on and so forth. You have that conversation, right? You're not just showing up out of the blue, oh, here's my invoice. No, you kind of let them know as the project, move through, that this is where we expect you to have invoices. Again, if you're in the commercial space, it's typically on a monthly basis. So on a month to month, you're submitting your AIA certificate to the GC or the project manager or whomever to get paid. Again, follow their process. How do they want to get their, how are they accepting the certificates? Make sure you do it in a timely fashion, but then follow up with them. What's the status of my invoice? Where is it in process? Again, open communication, silence, or waiting until you're at a point where an invoice is 90 days old and you haven't spoken to anybody and now you're going to start to chase it up. That's not the time to do it. Again, if you're having challenges financially as well with a supplier, you don't wait until you've gotten to a point where you owe them $100,000 and now you have that conversation with them that you're having difficulty paying them. Again, constantly having the open line of communication with everyone, so everyone knows kind of who's on first, what needs to happen next, and if something is going on. Streamline your payment processes. Don't make it hard for people to pay you. I had personally had work at my home done a couple of years ago. Work was done, one day, and then a month, maybe 5 weeks later, I got the invoice, the paper invoice in the mail. And now I have to find my checkbook. I've got to get an envelope. I have to get a stamp and send it in the mail. So the reality is that particular contractor probably wasn't paid until week 6 or 7 from the time that they did my project to the time that I actually paid them. So I'm all about automation. get yourself, if you're using QuickBooks Online, which we tend to, most of our clients do, use the feature in QuickBooks Online if you can, and send your invoices out. Have that process, have that collection process, have that, the follow-up emails, is my invoice in process to be paid? Same thing now, if you're in the commercial space, and again, it's typically on a monthly basis, make sure you're remitting your invoices on a monthly basis to the GC so that you can, in fact, get paid. But you have to have that process streamlined as well as mapped out internally in your business in order to actually, in order to get paid. I mean, that's the reality of it. You want to get paid. Again, you want to make sure you monitor your cash flow regularly. It could be just a simple little Excel spreadsheet. It doesn't have to be fancy. Just make sure you're tracking it. We keep track of KPIs for clients. So those are key performance indicators. We're looking at ratios. We're looking at their ratios, their debt ratios. We're looking at, current assets to current liabilities, right? So do they have enough cash to settle the liabilities? Or do they have enough assets to settle those liabilities? We're looking at those things on a regular basis to ensure that a client isn't running into an issue down the road where they might be okay today, but 8 or 10 weeks out, they're going to run into a challenge. And the last, and I mentioned this already, is build a relationship with your bank, right? Whoever you're doing whoever you have your banking with, build a relationship with somebody locally at that bank. There's hopefully a local branch near to you. Build a relationship with someone in the commercial lending space so that you can, in fact, borrow money. It isn't a challenge to borrow money. When they know who you are, it makes it a little bit easier to get through that process. When you're just somebody off the street and they don't know who you are, they're going to make you go through those hoops, right, in order to lend you money. So you don't want to kind of expose yourself. And then the other thing is don't wait until you run into a financial challenge to ask the bank for money. You want to make sure if you need a line of credit, you go out there and get a line. I have a line of credit. I think I've used it twice in the 5 years I've had it, but it's there. If I run into a challenge, it's there, and it's there for me to draw on. Same thing for clients. We recommend that. If they're running into a challenge, they can draw on it, but you don't go to the bank when you need money yesterday. It's never going to be benefit. It's never going to help you. Puts you in a really odd position. And you don't want to be dependent upon that and realize that you can't get it because now they see that you've run into some financial challenges. So hoping that these were all very helpful tips for you to manage your cash flow. A lot of them were construction specific, but a lot of the other things that we did talk about really can be, broadly across many different businesses, making sure you have an invoicing system and you're doing cash flow, you're forecasting your cash. Those are all things that any business can do. So we would love it if you joined our Facebook group. So our Facebook group is the Construction CPA Circle. So please join us. If you love today's cafe, remember to comment down below. And I ask if you can comment, if you want to comment with either #coffeebreak or #cashflow. And remember, we're dropping the hammer on cash flow problems for contractors with hands-off accounting so you can build things that matter. I will see you next week and have a fabulous weekend.